Namaste, World Raiser. So, I've been in Varanasi 5 months, and I spent a lot of time on the ghats. Yeah, absolutely love the ghats of Varanasi. And of course, two of those very important ghats are the burning ghats, the Manikarnika Ghat and the Harishandra Ghat. So where the cremations take place, 24/7, all the time. And I was told, but like fluctuates, but around 100 people per day. Bodies get cremated. So of course, we know that that's the big ceremony, and that's why many people come to Varanasi, is for the moksha, the liberation, the salvation at the time of death, to just be burned and then the ashes sent out into the Ganga is very, very symbolic, powerful, and meaningful, and to believe in that and to hold that in mind, leading up to one's death, and to know that that's where you're going to be cremated. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful. So I spent a lot of time, at those ghats in particular, just witnessing it, seeing it, and even that is, very powerful to contemplate and to see it as a transition, right? So it's not an end, it's just the transition from one form, to another. So heading back into just pure light, pure consciousness, and then transitioning into another form from there, unless you've managed to succeed in the complete dissolution into total liberation, moksha. So whatever your spiritual ambition or goal is, because we've got to remember that God, the infinite field, the source of infinite possibilities, allows for us to attain what we desire and seek ultimately. So if it's a total dissolution into this omniscient mind, this formlessness that is one with the absolute formless divine, that's entirely possible. And then the consciousness would just enter into, pure bliss, for eternity. Or there's higher realms where you can, incarnate in another physical form. And I believe that it would even be possible to incarnate in a form exactly like the one that we have here. And I believe that some religions that's truly, what they believe. Like Christians, for example, they believe that they have one lifetime. If you believe in Jesus, then you're going to go to heaven, right? And then as you, right? So they got the concept where the ego self, the self that you identify as, the thinking mind and the body, that's you ultimately. Whereas in the Dharmic religions, it's more of, no, this is an appearance to the mind, right? Ultimately, who you are is the consciousness, the awareness, the soul, the Atman. And that's ultimately higher. And that's how I see it too. So there's graduations to that wisdom and understanding. So Christianity is very much based on attaining the level of unconditional love, and then belief in Jesus will allow you to enter those higher states, but it's still due to divine grace. It's the grace of Jesus, of God, that will bring you up into those heavenly realms. So similar here, there's no enlightenment, there's no, transcendence into the higher realms of existence without the grace of the Guru, the grace of God. Everything is divine, and everything is a play. So we got to undergo many things, trials and tribulations in life, and then to come out of that, higher and better off at a higher level. So it's really about letting go of the negativities on the journey, and when bad things happen, to really see them as a blessing to let go of, right? An opportunity. So when something happens, it's like, oh, here's something to practice, right? Which is why, forgiveness is so powerful. So the moment of death and the time of death and what happens after death is, something everybody needs to ponder and contemplate. And there's many many books out there, many gurus that talk about it. For me, I first really dove into the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism and then the Bardo realm, which is very much, where some wrathful emanations appear to the mind once you leave the body, and then you got to recognize those as, manifestations of your own mind, right? So very much everything in reality is a manifestation within your own mind, because ultimately our mind is one with the infinite, supreme, divine mind of God. So to recognize that can lead to, total liberation, right? And if you get caught up in the fear, then you're still perceiving yourself as separate, from creation, from the illusion. And then that indicates that you're not ready to transcend, and then you come back into the world based on, your karma and your level of consciousness. So, and possibly not even this realm. There's like an infinite number of spiritual realms and worlds, very similar to this one as well. So this is kind of like a purgatory realm because we have access to the full spectrum of levels of consciousness. So there's going to be heavenly realms here, and of course we know there's many places that are hell on earth, very low level of consciousness. So what's happening now is, with immigration and multiculturalism encapsulating the globe, and then, and then travel so easy. So everything's kind of blending together into this gigantic smorgasbord, and there's a lot of clashes. There's a lot of protests and a lot of resistance happening now, but ultimately it's part of what needs to happen ultimately, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. So a coming together of peoples, and eventually once we get through the dark times, then it'll be more cohesiveness, whether we go through a lot of suffering to bring that about or not. It can happen either way. So ultimately we got to remember that God is in charge. There's a divine play happening, and we really need to do our due diligence, right? So working on our behavior, seeking our enlightenment, our moksha, our liberation. And then that raises our level of consciousness, and then that raises the whole field. So the realms after death, are going to correspond to whatever level of consciousness you've attained, the deities that you're focusing on. If it's just one, you're going to go to a divine realm, perhaps, if you've attained a high enough level. And then rebirth into this realm, if that's what's happening. It's going to depend on, your karma and your level of consciousness as to what sort of lifetime you're going to undergo. So behavior, right? So for example, really rich people that are very greedy and maybe discriminatory to others. So for example, if they're still practicing this caste system, if you have a rich, Brahmin or Kshatriya that is absolutely horrible to the Dalits and very racist and discriminatory and treating them like dirt, there's a very big chance that that person will reincarnate as a Dalit, right? That's just the way it is. You're not gonna get into heaven, into the higher realms, moksha, liberation, if you're not behaving accordingly. And that's a big misperception in a lot of religions and spiritual traditions. To just believe in something is going to, set you free. To just believe in Jesus, yet do all sorts of horrible things like, the corn industry. There's many Christians within that. There's like OnlyFans happening now, a lot of Christian young women, right? There's, many cheatings and betrayals within relationships, within all the religions. So to just believe that Jesus will save you when you're not doing anything to behave like Jesus taught you to behave is delusion. So in the same way, like I'm not being disrespectful towards the traditions, but to just believe that bathing in the Ganga is going to lead to liberation, for example, in moksha at the time of death, it's ridiculous, right? Because you got to practice the teachings. What are the teachings, right? It's behavior modification to understand, non-duality. We're all one in reality, so then we got to act accordingly. So if you're treating people horribly, if your consciousness level is in the lower levels, then your destiny isn't the higher realms, because how can you get into the higher realms if you're in the lower realms? You got to get into the higher realms, levels of consciousness, now, before death, right? That's the mission. So that's what I wish for you. I hope and pray for all Indians, all Hindus, all younger generation that are out there practicing spirituality right now, to understand that that's what it's all about. It's about our behavior in the world with others. What can we do? How can we help? How can we be of service? So keep that in mind. Practice, practice, practice. Transforming the mind to more purity raises you up. If you have the base levels, anger, hate, greed, lust, pride, shame, guilt, anger, these have to be transcended and let go of. So wishing you the best on the journey. Contemplate death. It's we're not sure. We're unsure of the time of death. So we got to practice. Practice, practice, practice. So I wish that for you, and I pray for you, and I hope for the best. So let me know if you're contemplating death, and then if you're practicing the teachings. So hope to see you on the next one. Peace.